Alright, we're back here with Lone Star Grills. Today we're going to do a video on ribeye steaks. Not only are we doing ribeye steaks, but we're going to do these ribeye steaks two ways. We have two ribeyes here. These are 2-inch thick cut bone-in ribeyes. We're going to do these two different ways. We're going to sear one and we're going to reverse sear the other. And what that basically means is that the first one, we're going to do it the traditional way. We're going to throw it on a high heat grill. As hot as we can get it, we're going to sear both sides for less than a minute on each side, and then we're going to take it off of the heat and do an indirect cook. The second steak, we're going to do the exact opposite. We're going to put it on the indirect side first. We're going to cook that steak indirectly until it comes up to the temperature we want it, and then at the very end we're going to finish it with the reverse sear. So we're going to high sear that, or high temp sear that at the very end. Both of these steaks are the exact same. Both of them were basically cut from the same rib roast. They were cut from the one next to the other, so they're identical. These are bone-in steaks, and these do happen to be prime cut steaks. Take a look at the marbling in this. You know, we can get better steaks than this. You can get worse steaks than this. This is a restaurant quality steak here. They do make better steaks, but I think for my money, I think the prime cut's the best that there is. The marbling in here is very uniform, not too much fat on it. Again, this is the bone-in, and these are about 2.5 pounds each. So again, exactly the same. Everything we're doing, we're going to start out with the same. For today's, and this is the way I do every steak basically, we're going to do a dry brine on these. And what a dry brine is, basically, we're going to season both of these with some coarse sea salt. We're going to coat both sides, plenty of salt. And it's important to use a coarse salt. I think sea salt or kosher salt works best. Table salt, just stay away from that. What a dry brine does is it's going to do two things. First off, we're going to have to, well, let me back up here just a little bit. Dry brining is a process that's not going to be instant gratification. This is going to take a minimum of 24 hours up to 48 hours. Two things are going to happen here. Over that long period of time, the salt is going to draw all the moisture out of the meat. That's going to happen. So if you don't let this sit long enough, then you're going to pull the moisture out of the meat. But we're going to let it sit long enough where that moisture is going to be reabsorbed back into the meat. When the moisture is reabsorbed into the meat, that's going to pull that salt and that pepper back into the middle of that. So we're basically going to season not just the top, but that's going to pull the seasoning all the way through that steak. Second thing that happens when you dry brine is that's going to help tenderize the meat. This is a very tender cut. This is a very, very high grade of steak, but we're going to make it more tender than it already is. So we're going to take both sides of this. Both sides are going to be treated the exact same way. Liberally coating it with coarse sea salt, and then the coarse black pepper. Like I said, 48 hours max, 24. Again, if you just did this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours before you cooked it, then you're not going to allow enough time for that moisture to be pulled back into the steak. This is not exactly the same as a dry aged steak, and it's not even close actually, but it's going to yield a similar result, and we can do it much quicker and for much less money too. So what we're going to do, both of these are ready. Both of these are going to go in the refrigerator. Open, we're not going to cover them. Both of these are going to go in the refrigerator for at least 24 hours. And that's what we're going to do here. Tomorrow we'll come back, we'll set up the smoker for the indirect cooking method, and we'll have a high heat fire on one side, and then we'll have our indirect on the other side. And we'll come back in the morning, get the fire started, and get these going. All right, we're back. We've let these steaks dry brine for 24 hours. We've got the 2-inch thick bone-in ribeyes ready to go. Those have been dry brining again for 24 hours. The whole point of today's video is to cook these steaks 2 different ways and see which one works better. Whether we sear it or we reverse sear it, which one comes out the best. Now, I've cooked hundreds and hundreds of these steaks, and I've tried just about everything out there. Everything from letting them come out and rest at room temperature, throwing them directly on a hot fire and flipping them 3 times until they're done. Out of all the different grilling methods out there, I think these 2 right here, whether it's seared or reverse seared, are the best possible ways that you can cook these steaks. I just don't think there's any a better way to do it. And you know, my own personal preference, I'll leave that aside for a minute because that's what this is all about, is to do them both, each a different way, and see which one comes out best. I want to show you a little bit about the way we've got this set up here today. We've got our fire going just as hot as we can get it. We've dropped our grill grate down close to our firebox because we're going to sear directly over that high heat. We've got our cook chamber over here. Right now it's reading about 275. So what we've done, we're leaving this firebox open because we want heat coming into the firebox, but we don't want it as hot as it would be if this door was closed. So we want to cook low and slow over here, but we want the fire as hot as we can possibly get it over here. So we'll come back in just a minute. We're going to throw one of these steaks on the smoker. We're going to throw one of them directly over the fire, and then we'll reverse that process once these steaks come up to temperature. All right, so we got our steaks ready to go on the pit here now. I want to point this out real quick. We've got both of our steaks here. They dry brined for 24 hours. When you look at the steak, you're not going to see any of that salt left. All that salt was dissolved, pulled all the moisture out, and then all that moisture and all that seasoning went back down into the meat. So all that salt you saw us put on there 24 hours ago, that has all been absorbed into the meat and is going to be all the way down into the steak. Very, very, very important when you're dry brining this to let that sit for at least 24 hours. So we're going to take one of these. This first one here, directly over that fire. And that's only going to take about 45 seconds to a minute on each side. Other steaks going directly on the pit. So we're going to let this get a crust on it here for just a minute. A little bit on each side. We got this fire about as hot as we can get it. This works really good on this offset smoker. Also works real good on our Santa Marias. Works beautifully on our adjustable charcoal grills. Fire pits, we can also do that. We'll check that second side there. A little bit more. Another thing to point out is I didn't let these steaks come to rest. These steaks went on directly out of the refrigerator. I think that is important. Put them on the pit when they are cold. That way they don't overcook. I'm going to throw that first side down just for another second or two and let that cook. Get a little more crust on that first side. Perfect. So now this one will go on the pit. We're going to let both of these come up to temperature, which we're going to use a instant read thermometer to make sure we got a perfect 125 internal temp. And then we'll reverse sear this one, and then this one will be done. Be back in just a minute. All right, so we're back now. It's been about 45-50 minutes since we put these on. We've been cooking this offset on indirect heat now. Remember, we seared the one first. This one's going to be seared here in a second. We've been cooking this. This has been running, the pit temperature or the grate temperature here has been running about 225, 250. This is the one that was seared first. This is the one we're going to sear now. This is the reverse sear one. Really, really important. My last video when I did the brisket, I didn't use any meat probes. I didn't use any temperature monitoring. The brisket, the pork butt, I like to cook those by time and temp. Just experience has told me to know when that's done. But with the steak,
An instant read thermometer is key in getting it exactly, whether it's medium rare, or well done, because it can be 1 degree difference from one way to the other. So having that instant read thermometer, knowing exactly when to pull that steak is key. That's one of the keys to success. So we've got this one steak here, it's done. The second steak, the reverse sear one, we're gonna sear it. Same thing, I've got that fire just as hot as I can get it. I've moved my grill grate down from its top grate. This is going to take less time than our first one did. Like I said, as hot as you can get it. That was a little warm. Get a longer set of tongs. So now we're going to take both of these. Seared, reverse seared. We're going to let these rest for about probably 10-15 minutes. That way all the juices redistribute throughout them. Again, that's another one of the key things. We talked about that in the last video. Brisket and those ribs, we let them rest 2 hours. This one's gonna be about 10-15 minutes. That way all those juices redistribute. Okay, so we're back here. It's been about 15 minutes. We let these steaks rest. I went ahead and cut into them so you can see here. We have the one first here that was seared first and then cooked low and slow. We got a nice medium rare. This one was the reverse seared one that we seared at the end. So we cooked this one at 225, 250. And at the very end, we threw it on that high heat. You can look at all the juice here, all the juice throughout the steak. How nice and even that color is all the way through. For my money, and I think you can tell here, this one's just a little bit, has a little bit less color. This was the one that was seared. Seared first, that's kind of the old school way of doing it. This is the reverse sear. This is what I prefer, the reverse sear. I just think that that gives you a little bit more even cook throughout the piece of meat, and a little bit better color all the way through. Thanks again for checking us out, and please check out our YouTube channel and subscribe for more cooking videos. For more about our products, check us out at LoneStarGrills.com.